In 1969, the Navy establishes Top Gun, the fighter weapons school, to teach pilots dogfighting. Here, fighter crews go through intensive training in air combat maneuvering and weapons systems employment. The 4-week course provides aviators instruction that simulates real combat conditions. The invaluable dogfight training from this school will help earn Randall Cunningham and Willie Driscoll a place in history over the skies of Vietnam. Commissioned into the Navy in 1967, Cunningham's love of John Wayne films and aggressive nature won him the nickname Duke.
I was with Duke Cunningham during the entire combat cruise, and he was 24 hours, 7 days a week. He would just as soon skip lunch and go read up something in the book. Very dedicated to his craft. And as I found out in reading up about gentlemen like Oswald Boelke and Manfred von Richthofen, they were the same way.
In 1972, Duke Cunningham is a pilot aboard the USS Constellation, flying the Navy's newest fighter, the F-4 Phantom. The Phantom divides the workload between two men, the pilot and the radar intercept officer, or RIO. Cunningham's RIO is Lieutenant J.G. Willie Irish Driscoll.
The idea behind it was to take some of the burden off the pilot so that he wouldn't have to worry about flying the plane, running the electronic countermeasures, deploying chaff and flares, running the radios, running the radar and all this. At the same time working together, two sets of eyes and two sets of brains are better than one.
Cunningham and Driscoll train relentlessly together, becoming a formidable fighting team.
We knew each other's tendencies and strengths and weaknesses. We're welded at the hip, as brothers might be, when you go through something like that.
That training will be invaluable. On this day in 1972, they're heavily outnumbered in their F-4 Phantom over North Vietnam by a brutal range of Soviet-built fighters, including the notorious MiG-17. This modernized version of the MiG-15 is a nimble and formidable opponent. At low speed, it can easily outturn the Phantoms.
The thing that the MiG had was a small airplane, small size, hard to see.
Size wasn't the F-4's only disadvantage.
The F-4, large, bulky, leaves two big smoke trails when it's not an afterburner. Easy to see, therefore, at long distances. Whoever gets visual first has got a much better advantage. In fact, surprise is one of the elements in the combat arena that's historic.
With a top speed of nearly 1,500 miles per hour, the American F-4 Phantom is twice as fast as the MiG-17. Armed with 2 medium-range Sparrow and 4 short-range Sidewinder missiles, the F-4 can strike from over 25 miles away. The MiG is more agile than the Phantom, but the F-4 is faster and has a better rate of climb. The MiG's biggest advantage is its armament. In addition to missiles, it also carries short-range guns that the Phantom lacks. May 10, 1972. Randy Cunningham pilots the F-4 Phantom Showtime 100 into the skies of North Vietnam. Now, enter the cockpit and relive one of the most savage dogfights of the jet age. May 10, 1972. Randy Cunningham and Willie Driscoll in the F-4 Showtime 100 are on a 35-plane raid against the Hai Dong rail yards.
I remember it was a beautiful day, just wispy clouds going through the skies, and you know, as you're climbing in a fighter and you're looking at that armada that you're joining and stuff, it's pretty awesome to look at the power, and at the same time, I'd already lost some good friends. It was deadly serious and earnest, and you didn't want to make mistakes.
Cunningham's Phantom is also armed with bombs for ground attack. The North Vietnamese are determined to shred the strike force. They launch MiGs from 5 airfields, protecting the rail yards with anti-aircraft guns and surface-to-air missiles. like the SAM SA-2. After dropping the bombs on enemy warehouses, Cunningham and Driscoll loiter to cover the A-7 attack aircraft, the Navy bombers. Cunningham's wingman is Brian Grant.
I told Willie, I said, look at that target we just hit, because we decimated the whole thing. Were secondary explosions. But about that time, Brian Grant spoke up and he said, Dukes, MiG-17s at 7 o'clock.
Two MiG-17s swooped down behind their two Phantoms. Tracers flash by their cockpit. The MiGs are traveling fast. Cunningham knows at top speed the MiG, lacking hydraulic controls like the F-4, is hard to turn.
So I looked at him and I said, no, you can't do it. Broke into him and he overshot right down below me.
But the second MiG, 1,500 feet behind, rolls up to Cunningham's belly. Brian Grant and his Rio, Jerry Sullivan, tell Cunningham they'll take care of the second MiG, leaving Cunningham free to deal with the MiG that overshot him.
I put my nose on him and come through him. I get a sidewinder tone and squeeze the trigger. The missile literally went up his tailpipe and exploded.
It's Cunningham and Driscoll's third kill of the war. The MiG that had been under Cunningham's belly was still there. Cunningham accelerates, puts on 500 knots, and gets away from the MiG. Having escaped the danger, Cunningham and Driscoll decide to get more MiGs. They pitch up, go over the top, roll out in a maneuver known as an Immelmann turn, named for famed German ace Max Immelmann, and head back to the fight. Below, they see two Phantoms trapped in a wheel of 8 circling MiGs and in danger.
MiGs would fly in a wagon wheel, MiG-17, MiG-17, MiG-17 all the way around, and there was 8 of them. The tactic that they use, if you get behind one of them, there'll always be a MiG behind you. If you don't get in there with them, you fly tangent to it and you go through and shoot them and then go out the other side and keep your speed up. But in that wheel was 2 other Phantoms.
As Cunningham starts to head in, an F-4 shoots out of the circle, so close they nearly collide. It's Commander Dwight Timm, Cunningham's executive officer, and Timm's Rio, Jim Fox. Timm is here. There's 2 MiGs on his 5 o'clock, which he sees. But he doesn't see a MiG-17 on his wing, closing in to attack. Cunningham falls in behind and calls for the F-4 in port turn to break away. With Timm's Phantom and the attacking MiG close together, the Sidewinder can't lock on to the enemy plane. If Cunningham fires, the missile could lock on Timm. Cunningham again warns Timm to break right.
He really yelled it out loud, at which point every F-4 out there broke right.
Timm, who'd been focusing on the MiGs at his 5 o'clock, now quickly accelerates. He brakes hard right. The MiG turns, but at this speed can't match the move. Some American pilots, referencing a popular TV show, Gomer Pyle, call the enemy pilots Gomer.
Knowing the enemy's airplane helps because a MiG-17 doesn't have hydraulically boosted controls. It takes a big Gomer in there to pull that pole when he's got all that speed and that G and then nose downhill.
Finally, Cunningham has a clear shot at the MiG. It is Cunningham and Driscoll's 4th kill. Then, 4 MiG-21s, watching the fight from above, decide to roll in for revenge. The MiG-21 is a fast, agile, and feared opponent.
It'd be stupid to take on a MiG-21 in his best operating envelope, which is higher. He out-accelerates you, out-climb you, and out-turn you. If you don't have the advantage, run. Go home. Come back the next day. Smart.
Cunningham decides it's time to retreat. He pulls hard and turns in the opposite direction from the MiGs, then heads back to his carrier. Nearing the coast at 10,000 feet, they spot a MiG-17 heading toward them.
I said, Willie, we got a MiG, 12 o'clock. Try and lock him up. He couldn't get a lock. And I said, I'm going to scare the blank out of this MiG. And so I passed right down with full intention, just scaring the heck out of him.
Cunningham's made an almost fatal error.
He started to shoot at us with his gun. We major mistake past. We forgot that that's right. They have your gun equipped.
Vertical and roll to try and see him because Hanoi was that way. Any MiG that we ever engaged that hadn't had a real advantage, they'd run.
Cunningham and Driscoll looked back, expecting to see the retreating MiG.
Instead of running, he had pulled and gone vertical with me. Now I'm looking at probably 300-400 feet. Close enough I could look in and see a little set of Gomer goggles, little Gomer scarf that he had on his neck, and we're going canopy to canopy with a MiG-17 like this.
Cunningham lights his afterburners and climbs above the MiG. It's his second near-fatal error in minutes. The MiG is now on his 6 and opens fire.
It was a big mistake. And, you know, I was thinking about recovering from it, and, you know, your fangs come on at that point, and your mind says, okay, settle down, dude.
Cunningham rolls off to the side to escape the deadly line of bullets. But the MiG matches his every move.
The only rule was there were no rules. It was a knife fight in a telephone booth.
After all they've been through, Cunningham and Driscoll are still in for the fight of their lives. May 10th, 1972. Randy Duke Cunningham and Willie Irish Driscoll have shot down 2 MiGs in a raid over North Vietnam. Now they're in the enemy's sights. They use all their training and skill, but the MiG-17 on their tail matches them move for move. Cunningham and Driscoll are determined to take the MiG down. But the Red pilot has more than luck. Most North Vietnamese pilots rarely fight in the vertical. They either fight in the horizontal or run. This pilot is different. He has skill, expertise, and a killer's instinct.
I look and I'm looking right at his eyeballs. And I mean, it's like looking at a cobra ready to strike you. And that chill going through your spine, it's every emotion you've ever felt. Fear, hate, anger, love. All of those emotions, magnify them 1,000%. And what helps you is that if you panic, then you're vulnerable. And that's where your training kicks back in.
Cunningham and Driscoll set a trap. They nose down to gain speed. The MiG, taking the bait, does the same. Cunningham pulls up, rolls over the top of the MiG, and gets behind him. It's a maneuver called the rolling scissors. Then the MiG uses Cunningham's maneuver and pulls up into him.
I overshot. And then I accelerate again and said, okay, this guy knows what a rolling scissor is.
Each aircraft attempts to roll into his opponent's 6 o'clock. They climb and roll, each fighter trying to get into attack position behind the other.
We're noting that this pilot is flying this plane very well, and he's also handling his weapon system very well. Very different from what we've encountered with the other enemy pilots. This fellow knew just what he was doing and just how to do it.
As the 2 jets maneuver, fighting gravity, they lose speed.
It was a three-dimensional rolling fight, and we went through maybe 2 or 3 of these rolls. The last time we knew that is when we went up to the vertical, we were going to run the risk of stalling or go to zero airspeed, in which case, if he had a little bit more airspeed than us, he was going to be able to kill us.
At low speed, the smaller MiG can outturn the big American jet. This is becoming the MiG's fight.
I don't fight his fight. I don't get into a turning fight with him because that's his fight. I'll force him into the vertical, or I'll force him to do something else that I want. When you set a trap for somebody, you also are cognizant that another good pilot could be setting a trap for you.
Cunningham knows it's time to turn the fight around. He fires his afterburners, dumping raw fuel into his exhaust to gain more speed. And at 600 knots, darts 2 miles away from the MiG, ending the rolling scissors. Cunningham and Driscoll take a second pass at the MiG. This time angled to the side so the MiG can't fire head-on. Then Cunningham climbs. So does the MiG, starting another rolling scissors.
He would force me to overshoot, use a rudder, kick like this. Very experienced pilot.
As they keep in the rolling scissors, Cunningham loses speed and again risks making it the MiG's fight. Cunningham is furious. The MiG has gained the advantage twice. For the second time, Cunningham hits his afterburners, puts 2 miles between his Phantom and the MiG, then roars back to attack. Cunningham puts his nose up 60 degrees and begins to climb. Again, the MiG follows him. Cunningham tries a trick he learned at Top Gun. He hits his air brake and idles his throttle, slowing down the Phantom. Cunningham knows the MiG is expecting him to overtake and pass, putting the MiG on the Phantom's 6. For Cunningham, slowing down is a dangerous move. He could easily stall and lose control of his plane, giving the MiG a huge advantage.
One of the things we always teach at Top Gun is we want our pilots to fly that airplane 1 inch from out of control at all times in a purposeful way. And that's what Duke is doing with this airplane right now.
It works. The MiG shoots out in front and above him.
It's like if you put on your brakes, a car is going to go by you on the highway. That's what I was trying to do to get him.
Finally, Cunningham and Driscoll have the advantage. If Cunningham had a gun, he could blow the MiG out of the sky. But all he has is missiles, and he's too close to use them.
But I made another mistake. I expected that relative motion to keep going like this, but he ran out of speed, and I ended up about 700 to 800 feet away from him. And I can't shoot him because the missile won't arm at that point unless it just hits him.
The MiG pilot knows he's in desperate trouble and rolls over the top, away from Cunningham and Driscoll. At the top of the roll, he briefly stalls and heads into a dive. He recovers with Cunningham and Driscoll behind him. The MiG heads for the ground, opening the range, but hoping the ground heat will prevent the Sidewinder's heat seeker from locking onto it.
He just kept running. So when he got nose to tail position, about 2,000 feet, I just stood on the rudder like this, pointed the nose at him and shot him.
It's Cunningham and Driscoll's 5th kill. They later discover that this great adversary may have been the legendary Colonel Toom, widely believed to be North Vietnam's leading ace. But celebrations will have to wait. Cunningham and Driscoll are a long way from home. With more MiGs closing in, they roll out and head for the coast.
And as I rolled, look up, I could just see a SAM coming, an SA-2. It's about the size of a telephone pole.
The SA-2 has a top speed of Mach 3.5, over 2,660 miles per hour. This missile can obliterate jets at 60,000 feet.
The first time you see a surface-to-air missile launched at you, the first time there's heavy anti-aircraft artillery, those are stressful, very stressful times. And even after all of the training, you never really know how you're going to handle that until the bullets are real.
So I saw this SAM, and I just started to break into it, which is lucky I didn't, because if I would have broken, this thing went off, it would have gone right through Willie and I through the cockpit.
Then the SAM explodes nearby.
Sounded like someone took 1,000 BBs and threw against, your car. And the airplane kind of shook itself a little bit.
Maybe 15 seconds later, Duke says Willie was starting to lose PC-2. That was one of our main hydraulics. As he said that, I looked back over the left side of the plane. I noticed the left turtleback area of the plane. There's fire on the side of the plane.
The Phantom skids violently to the left. The backup hydraulics fail.
Duke comes back. Willie was starting to lose PC-1. PC-2 is going to 0.
Then, a pilot's worst nightmare.
The airplane all of a sudden rolled upside down, out of control. And I remember thinking, the only time I'd ever asked for divine help is when I got in trouble, And I remember thinking, God, I don't want to be a prisoner of war. I don't want to die. Get my rear end out of this.
With the backup hydraulic system gone, Cunningham rolls upside down and tilts the nose up so it won't pitch down. He controls the Phantom with the rudders. They roll nearly 20 times, descending from 27 to 17,000 feet, but speed closer to the sea. To eject over land means becoming a POW. Every second they can keep flying brings them nearer to the coast and rescue. They stay with the plane as fire warnings blare.
You have to get through that and have a firm enough grip on yourself to get done what has to be done at the moment.
The Phantom spins violently downward. Cunningham and Driscoll are over enemy territory, on fire, and going down fast. May 10, 1972 started well for Randy Duke Cunningham and Willie Irish Driscoll. They killed 3 MiGs. It may be one fight too many. Wounded by a SAM missile, they spin out of control over North Vietnam.
Now there was a fire about 40 feet behind us, and Willie said, Duke's getting hot back here. And I could see the fire out the mirrors, and I put the stick, and the airplane kind of righted itself, and I remember thinking, God didn't have anything to do with this. It was just my superior flying skills. But about that time, the airplane went back upside down, and I remember thinking, God, I didn't mean it. Get me out of here. I rolled the airplane some 30 miles using only rudder and power until the tail actually blew off, and the airplane went into a violent spin. Luckily, the radios were knocked out because there are people screaming at us on this tape. And they're saying, get out of that airplane in a spin over the beach, get out of that airplane. I didn't hear any of that, which I was glad.
Mark, get out of that airplane. Get out of that airplane. Everyone's going down in the spin off the beach.
Finally, they clear the coast.
The plane flipped onto its back. I did pretty much a handstand off the top of the canopy when he gave me the Willie eject, eject, eject. We have an alternate handle between our legs. It was a struggle to get to it. I just got a couple fingers on it, and they always taught us in training to keep our arms in so we don't break our arms, but I was kind of bent like a pretzel. Pulled it, and then bam, he went off one direction, I went off the other. We had like rockets in the back of the seat, so the rockets fired us out.
325, no DME, about 5 miles off the beach. Okay, stick with those.
Moments after they eject, Showtime 100 crashes into the sea. they're quickly rescued. With 5 kills, Cunningham and Driscoll are the first aces of the Vietnam War. Their squadron, the Fighting Falcons, will have the most air-to-air kills of any Navy unit in Vietnam. Thanks to men like Cunningham and Driscoll, the Americans maintain total air superiority in the Vietnam War, forcing the North Vietnamese Air Force on the defensive. After Vietnam, Cunningham remained on active duty and served as an instructor at Top Gun, the Navy Fighter Weapons School. He retired in 1988. Driscoll retired in 1988, was asked to join the Navy Reserve in 1990, and is a frequent guest speaker at the Navy's Top Gun School.
That's why Top Gun and the Air Force Fighter Weapons School exists, to help our pilots learn and training what they're going to need to know in combat to keep them alive and protect our country.
Starting in 1973, the Phantom is replaced by the F-14 Tomcat. Because of the lessons learned in Vietnam, the Tomcat is armed with a gun, as a fast, nimble dogfighter, as are the later F-15, F-16, and the Navy's F-18 Hornet.
The F-18, for example, can, on a nose-low turn, can sustain 7.5 Gs. An F-4, by comparison, could only, in a situation like that, could sustain maybe 2 to 2.5 Gs. So it's a huge difference in performance ability.
But behind the technology, the basics remain the same.
If we have a missile, great, we can shoot them forward quarter. If we don't, we now have to apply those same concepts that Rickenbacker did and work ourselves behind him in the ability of shooting with our gun.
Modern fighters are also armed with the deadly 20mm Vulcan rotary cannon. It's a far cry from the 600 rounds per minute Vickers machine guns that forced Eddie Rickenbacker to close within 100 yards of his target. In the future, fighters like the F-22 Raptor will combine even greater maneuverability with higher sustained speeds and stealth technology that will render it nearly invisible to enemy sensors. The dogfight is one of war's most intense forms of combat.
There were so many times where a second here or there could have meant life or death.
There's another saying that I think encapsulates what it's like to be a fighter pilot. When he sees the enemy, he attacks and kills. Anything else is rubbish. That was spoken by Baron von Richthofen in 1916.
If you get a little bit sloppy, or a little bit careless, or if you don't remember and employ all of the things that you've learned, all of the procedures, all of the techniques, you can die very quickly.